And what I really want to talk about, even in this episode, is how when I came home and I had that realization, I was like, fuck, I can see how much that belief has affected me my whole life.
Hey, gorgeous. Welcome to Sunshine and Rosie, your new favorite cozy nook where we're going to talk everything from spiritual growth, cultivating a positive mindset, to discussing all the juiciness that this world has to offer. Basically, I want to show you how incredibly fascinating you are as a human and give you all my nuggets so that you can confidently embody your most chaotically beautiful self. So no matter what shitstorm the world is throwing at you, know that I'll always be that little sunshine in your pocket. God, that's so cheesy. Right.
Okay. So this is part 2 of my little lunar bridge scenario that I had with my mother and my grandmother, and going back home in between these two full moons, which happened to land on both their birthdays. My grandmother's birthday at the start of the month, and my mother's birthday at the end of the month. And me being the third generational woman, coming home and just happened to be home for the whole time in between that. And what I noticed most was their relationship with their bodies. If you haven't listened to part 1, go listen to part 1 because it's a whole thing. But the whole thing came back to me witnessing how all the women in my family, which is very common for Irish women and women in general, of this whole burden, being a burden, and this fear of being a burden, and how they will give you everything, give, 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 give. But when it comes to receiving, it's such a struggle. Okay. And what I really want to talk about, even in this episode, is how when I came home and I had that realization, I was like, fuck, I can see how much that belief has affected me my whole life. Because I've been Miss Independent, which is not a badge of honor, my whole life. And I've always struggled to ask for help. And I've been tested so much in the last couple of years with that whole lesson in itself. Um, and the one that really came to mind was last year. And I've made an episode on this, but last year when I didn't have an apartment, when my lease was up in one place, I didn't have another place. I had to move out. There was this whole period I was meant to go. It was actually around this time last year because I was going home for the photo shoot last year, and essentially I was homeless. I didn't have an apartment. I didn't have anywhere to go. And there was this whole just panic and stress, and I couldn't ask for help. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to figure it all out myself. And I met a friend here who is a saint, and we'd only been friends maybe a month or two. And she happened to be going home for a month or two, traveling and all of that. And she had an apartment here in the city. And she literally goes, take my apartment. She was like, take my apartment, figure it out. She was going to be gone as my lease ended in one place. And while I was in this in between stage. And she was like, take my apartment. You can, figure all your stuff out that you need to figure out here, and it'll all work out. And even if you need to store stuff, like, she just was like straight up. She didn't even question anything. She didn't even trust my, like, we had just become friends. And I remember in that moment, this instant relief of like, oh my God, this can be so good. Like, this is going to be so good. But then I also remembered, but that's just plan B, because I'm going to sort out everything before I even have to take her help and take her place. And so that was plan B. And as the time started creeping up to my lease running out and still no place showing up, I was kind of like, fuck, I actually think I need to take this help. I need this help off this friend. And because of the beautiful connections that I am making as I heal and as I grow and as I step further into myself, um, side note on relationships, you just meet people that it just goes deep so quick, and you feel like you can open up about these things and just have these conversations. But I remember she just being so accommodating and being like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And then I remember being like, look, I'm having a really hard time accepting this help. And I was just completely open with her. I'm like, the story I'm telling myself is that I'm a burden and that I'm burdening you. And I want to voice that. I want to get that out in the open. And I just want to say that. And she turned around, and I remember her turning around and saying something. And I was like, oh my God, it's so true. And she was like, I know. She was like, I know you're struggling to take this help. She's like, but what if I need to give you the help? And I was like, she was like, what if my thing that I need to do is to help you? And you're going to deny me of helping you? And I was like, oh my God, that just lifted a weight off my shoulder. Because that's the other thing that I want to remind you of so much, is that we find it so hard to ask for help. We find it so hard to look like a burden and ask for help. But firstly, it's one of the fucking strongest things you can ever do in this world, is to put your hand up and be like, look, I'm struggling. I need help. Okay? But I want to flip this around, and I want you to think of all the people you've helped, or think of all the times you've helped others. Okay? And how good has that felt? How good has it felt to be able to help somebody, to be able to see somebody who's struggling and be like, you know what, I can help this person, and putting your hand out and helping that person. It feels so good. It's so fucking incredible. And while you are helping that person, you're not looking at them like fucking burden. If you are, shame on you. But 90% of the time, when you are genuine, when this is coming from a genuine place, okay, I'm talking genuine here. When you are genuinely putting your hand out to help someone, you're not looking at that person being like, fucking look at the state of them. Shame on them, like. No, that those thoughts don't even cross your mind. You were just like, oh my God, I'm so happy that I'm in a position to help someone. And that's what my friend told me. She was like, I'm so fucking privileged that I am in a position that I get to help you. I get to help you, and I really want to help you. And take that as all the evidence that you need. And it was just this beautiful moment where I was like, it's so true. Because when anybody asks me for help, I'm not looking at them and judging them. I'm like, oh my God, if I have the sources to help you, then so fucking be it. I'm going to help you. And it just really helped me change the whole perspective of that. And that was like a beautiful lesson in just surrendering and receiving the help. And I had to do that because I think, was it like a week later or something? I was in her apartment. A week later, this beautiful apartment that I'm currently sitting in came up and came available. And it was just like, you'll get the apartment when you fucking receive this help. But that whole belief of being a burden has been a part of my life for so long. And still something that I struggle with in bits, but it's something I'm working through. But struggling to ask for help, overgiving, oh my Jesus Christ, people pleasing, doing everything at 110%. Oh my God, that's another thing. Running around the place and fucking just doing everything so quick, because you gotta make sure that you're doing, because it's also this whole narrative of, if you're not doing something, if you're not being of value, then you're not valuable and you're not worthy. And so, especially as women, we overdo, we overgive, we overcommit to everything. We move at 100 miles an hour because that's just proving that we're doing something, right? And if we're doing something, then we're valuable. Bullshit. Feeling responsible for everyone's comfort. Oh God, this was huge for me. And I spoke about this on social media earlier last week, but constantly feeling like everybody's enjoyment was on my hands. If I was with a group of friends, if I was out with people, if anything, if this whole idea of even like making the option or choosing the option, like choosing the restaurant or the place you'd go or anything like that, my whole head was like, oh my God, if people aren't having fun, this is my fault. You know, if I choose this place and what if somebody doesn't like the food, it's my fault. And it was always that my whole thing was scanning and making sure that everyone else was having a good time, because God forbid, if anybody wasn't having a good time, it's probably my fault. How exhausting does that sound? It fucking feels worse. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. Finding it easier to give than receive. Yes, we've kind of checked that one. The belief that your worth comes from being useful. Yes, we've checked that one too. So yeah, How many of you are relating to this? How many women in your life relate to this? Because Irish women, especially, being raised to be resilient, self-sacrificing, and not making a fuss. The glorification of burnout, the badge of honor around being the one who always copes. You know that shit. That badge of honor of like, she'll always show up, she'll always do it, when inside she's fucking dying and burnt out, and her cup is so empty. The fear of disappointing anyone and the fear of taking up space. So yeah, this is a whole thing that I just saw it so highlighted in my own journey and in my own story, and the last couple of years of how I've been working so hard on breaking these beliefs and reframing them and changing them in my own psyche, and how they don't really hold weight on me anymore. I've worked through a lot of them, and of course they're going to come up and, you know, show themselves again as you move up and stuff, because they always do, but each time you're just able to respond to them from a higher perspective, from a higher place. But anyway, I was having this understanding and I was like, oh my God. And then I just had this overwhelming sense of just the honor that I get to be the one to break this for the women in my family. That it's not being passed on. I don't know if I'm having kids. I don't know if I want kids, but any little kids that come under the O'Keefe name, they won't be carrying this shit, and I'm going to make sure of that. And it just makes me feel so good that I get to do this for not just me, but for all the women that have come before me in my family. And this visualization that I got was this idea of like honoring all of them for carrying all those weights, because it got me here. But this idea of almost seeing myself holding this basket of stones. This basket of stones with all these heavy weights that all the women before me have carried and just passed on. All these ideas of, you know, having to be resilient, self-sacrificing, don't be a burden, you know, you're only valuable if you're useful. All these beliefs that every woman before me had carried. And I had this visualization of it, me holding it and being like, thank you, but I'm putting it down. I'm not carrying this shit anymore. We don't have to carry this shit anymore. And it was this beautiful moment of this visualization of having that and been like, wow, it's very, I don't know, this is a little woo-woo and all of that stuff, but I think it makes sense, and I would love to hear if it does relate and align with anybody out there if you're listening to this. But just know, even if you are listening to this, you have the opportunity to change that. All those are just beliefs. They're all just beliefs that have been coded into our systems, that have been conditioned into us, that have been passed on from generation to generation to generation. And how fucking lucky and what a fucking privilege is it that you, the listener, gets to change that. You get to be the person in your family to put down that basket, to no longer carry those heavy weights. And to change the patterns, to ask for help, to voice when you're not feeling good, to sit back and receive. And I see how much my life has changed in the last couple of years and how fucking beautiful and how much lighter it's gotten. And wow, it was just a really nice, I guess, reflection on everything. And then even with the whole like inflammation and stuff, it was just very interesting how it all kind of correlated and how it all, because yeah, all these feelings of being a burden and not asking for help and all this, it shows up in our bodies in tension and fascia and all of that. It's our nervous system responding to that whole narrative of you have to keep giving, just give, and that then we're safe when we're giving. Yeah. So I just want to see. Oh, I have some questions here. So, firstly, sorry, the reframe that we're all going to take away from this, because all those things, all those narratives that we tell ourselves, they're just beliefs, and we get to change that. This is when we get to come in with our pen and rewrite that shit. So, receiving isn't selfish. Like, this is the shit you're subscribing to now, because the other stuff gone. Receiving isn't selfish. Rest is not fucking laziness. Rest is so necessary. Asking for help is no weakness. Asking for help is the biggest strength there is. Being cared for doesn't make you a burden, and your needs do not diminish your worth. So they're the reframes that we're carrying forward. And then something you can practice in small little ways, and do this in small ways, is learning to receive, letting people support you, as uncomfortable as it is, letting them support you, and even just voicing that with them, like I did with my friend. Just voicing it to her straight away within 2 or 3 sentences, my whole system was at ease, because I was like, oh my God, I'm not a burden. And oh my God, wow, actually, I need this help, but maybe she also needs to give the help. And how privileged she felt that she was able to give the help, you know? And that's it. That's what we do in this life, is that we put our hands back and we help whoever's behind us. That's how we're supposed to operate as humans, and with connections and all of that, is to just constantly put your hand out to help others, but also learn to ask for help as well, to be that receiving hand. Saying no without guilt, practice that shit. A really good way to do that is practice in small doses. Like, say no to the barista, say no to little things that don't carry this heavy weight, just so you can get used to your system saying no. Okay, this is how we train our nervous system. This is how we reprogram in these new beliefs. Small baby steps, always. Choosing joy, that's a big one. And not proving your worth through suffering. Yeah. So here's a few questions that I'll put them in the comment section below, but take a moment to actually just sit down and ask yourself these questions. Where in your life do you struggle to receive? What would happen if you stopped trying to earn your place? What is your worth? What if your worth had never been dependent on how much you carry? And what would your life look like if you stopped trying not to be a burden? Like, what would your life look like if you just asked for help? Or what would your life look like if you actually just said the thing out loud? Because even looking back on my family and those moments, like, and again, I'm just giving my perspective, my observation of the whole thing. But my auntie, when she went away, like, she probably caused more little stress in her system when she was like, oh God, I hope I'm not like, I hope they're not worrying about me, instead of being like just asking for the help at the start, and everything would have been taken care of a lot quicker. But she probably caused herself a lot of unnecessary stress on top of not feeling okay. Same with my granny, you know? She was probably causing herself unnecessary stress, worrying that we were worrying about her, you know? And that's something that I'm really proud of, that I get to be the woman in my family to break these, but not only just break them but show. I get to go home and I get to show the women that I'm no longer doing that shit, and that I'm putting myself first, and that I'm choosing me, and that I'm not falling into those categories or those brackets or those little boxes that they try and put us in. And I get to show them that. And that's the thing, like the older generation, might not be able to sit down and fucking change all this shit, because this shit is, we're in a place where we're able to, like, it's harder for the older generation. I'm just not going to go down this whole rabbit hole. But instead of sitting down and trying to explain it all and blah, 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 it's just easier to show them. Show them that you're changing, you're making changes, and you're no longer standing for those labels and those old ways of being. And going home and asking for help was a thing as well, like just showing that I'm not afraid to be like, and that's something I'm still very heavily working on. Miss Independent, living in a foreign country, living on my own, it's very easy to choose to hide than to ask for help. I just want to see if there's any last little things here that I want to touch on. Okay, here's a nice little thing. The women before you weren't weak. They adapted. Those strategies probably protected them. And that's the thing. Like, all these strategies, all these patterns that we see in the women, our parents, our grandparents, all of them, male, female, they're all strategies that they use to survive. And back then that's what they needed. It was coping mechanisms, it was survival strategies. And you don't have to carry that shit anymore. Being self-sacrificing may have genuinely kept families functioning. Keeping quiet may have kept peace. Being useful may have been how they secured love and belonging. So healing this isn't rejecting them. It's saying, thank you for getting us here. I honor what you carried, and I no longer need to carry it all of it forward. Because maybe your work isn't becoming less caring. Maybe it's to become a woman who knows that care includes herself. A woman who gives from overflow instead of depletion. A woman who receives without guilt. A woman who allows herself to be held. And perhaps that's what breaking the cycle actually looks like. Not becoming harder, but becoming softer without abandoning yourself. Because the truth is, you were never a burden. You were a human being with needs. And somewhere along the lines, you learned those two things couldn't coexist. And now, very gently, you get to teach your body otherwise. That's kind of cute. But it's so true. You can still be, and when I look at the women in my family, how fucking strong, and just, they don't take any bullshit. There's no flies on them. But you can still be strong and powerful and true to yourself and caring and loving and giving and all of those things. You can be all of those things, but just also be that to yourself. Don't abandon yourself. Know that both of those can coexist. And that's the magic. That's the magic. So anyway, that's my takeaway from the lunar bridges. It was very interesting, and I love all this shit, and I love how just everything aligns. There's so much more to it than this fucking physical 3D world. But yeah, let me know how that landed with you. Let me know if any of that related. I'm sure it did, because those are beliefs that we all carry as women. Let me know if you know any more things about lunar bridges. And yeah, thanks for listening, and I will catch you all next week. Okay, love you. Bye.
Oh, thanks so much for taking the time to dive into my brain with me. If any of this resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. DM me, share it with a friend, like, subscribe, leave a review, do all those juicy little things that help me reach more beautiful souls. And remember, you are chaotically beautiful, and that's all you ever need to be. I love you, I'm proud of you, and until next time, keep shining and stay rosy.